guys, we're the Family Fulfillment Project, and tonight we're talking about the process of adoption.
Right after this.
A couple weeks ago, I was reached out by a really big blogger asking me to write an article about our adoption. So since then, a bunch of people have been reaching out to me and asking me questions about our adoption process, where we started, how we even considered our adoption agency in particular. I have a bunch of questions from my Instagram that we're gonna go through and answer right now.
Right now?
Right now. If you haven't seen our adoption story, you can read it in the article listed below, or you can go to some of our old videos. We have all listed below 2 adoption videos that we have made in the past, kind of telling our story and our journey through adoption. But today we're gonna get into the nitty-gritty of actually starting the adoption process. What to do when you're thinking, I want to adopt. Where do I start, right? So the first question is, how can you estimate the cost for, can you estimate cost for using an agency?
Yes.
Yes.
Every agency that is out there will have, well, most of the agencies out there will have their costs all...
A generic price.
Yeah, they're kind of all listed out on their website. You know, and obviously there's some variables involved, but you can get a pretty good idea.
Huge variables. Huge, like 20,000 between some agencies. So you definitely want to do your research. And beyond anything, I would recommend going to people that are around you. That I'm sure everyone knows someone who is adopted. Go to people in your community that know someone who's adopted. Ask them questions how they chose an agency. That's what I did. I found people in my community that I know have adopted and just drilled them with questions of what they liked and didn't like about their agency. And then I kind of went from there. And
you can also set your own cost limits, at least with some agencies.
Yeah, with American Adoptions, what we went through, you can set your price point, like your max out of pocket. And that's legal fees and hospital fees for the birth mom and the baby and her housing while she's pregnant, all these things to support the birth mom. So with us choosing an agency, it was very important for us to find out what, like how they were supporting the birth mom and things like that. They provided an education fund for birth moms with a large portion of what we contributed towards our adoption fee, and we really liked that. So just make sure that you find out what you're comfortable with financially. It's going to be a large number because domestic adoption, private domestic adoption, not through foster care, is very expensive. All right, next question. Eek. Literally it says eek. What to consider when thinking about international versus domestic? So in my mind, I had always envisioned a international adoption. Like that was hands down. But you were more pulled towards domestic.
Yeah, I think I was. I think for me, I guess I haven't traveled internationally very much, so I think there was a lot of kind of scary unknowns really for me. And I think we also talked a lot about the fact that yes, there's children all over the world, but there are a lot of children right here where we live that need homes. Yeah. So, you know, we thought we were just kind of pulled to stay here.
Yeah, we really prayed about it and gave it thought. And when we settled on domestic adoption, we decided that was for us. And especially with international adoption, you usually get an older child. And at that point we had when we started the adoption process, we had what, a 14-month-old? Lawson was 14 months old. I don't know why we always want our kids to be 14 months apart. That's what we always shoot for, unintentionally. But we started the process when he was really young, and we didn't want to disturb the birth order because sometimes that's simpler for integrating a new child. So I didn't want to disturb the birth order that had been established so firmly in our family already. So that was another reason why we really went towards domestic adoption.
And lastly, international adoption can be very lengthy as far as time that you have to be away from your home. Yes. And when we have little kids, we really didn't want to be away from them for a long time. So that was another big part of the consideration. And
it can take 2 to 3 years, 4 years for an international adoption. And it's important for us, for our kids to be all close in age. At that point it was. So that's another reason why we chose domestic adoption. What are costs like? Did you consider international adoption and why? Oh, great question.
It's kind of a combination of the first two.
So we'll share our cost? Sure.
Yeah.
Our budget was $32,000.
Is that what we set it at?
Yeah, we set our budget at $32,000 with American, but we told them we'd be willing to go over some. So Miller was actually over that because there was complications with, or there wasn't complications, but she had a C-section, which cost more and things like that.
Yeah, so when it was all said and done, everything included, we ended up spending right about $40,000.
With travel and hotel, and we flew at Christmas time, so all the flights were like flying internationally. They were $1,000 each one way. So, and we had, what, 3 days notice. So it was a much more expensive process with the flights in general. That cost us about $5,000 more than we were anticipating. But because usually those flights are $200 round trip. But that was painful. The flights, when we went to book those, we were like, what? The flight of expense was definitely a lot more. If this is cutting weird, it's because my 6 and 7-year-olds keep coming up to go to the bathroom, even though they should be sleeping in the tent in the basement because they chose to have a camp out. But of course, when they're not in their beds, it takes much longer to go to bed.
Absolutely.
It's just, of course.
We did also save some money not having a hotel room for most of it, though, as well. So, could have been more.
What was the hardest part after you brought your baby home, and what was the easiest part? I'm curious to see what you say about this.
The hardest part and the easiest part. I'm going to have a hard time answering this question off the top of my head. Miller was our 4th child, and everything kind of seemed to just be natural at that point. And it kind of seemed like it was the same. It was almost a little bit of a different situation because you weren't in recovery like you normally were. So for me, it was almost an easier situation than when we normally have a new baby. Yeah.
I would definitely say it was like 100 times easier. But when Wesley, our 2nd oldest, was a baby, he had severe colic. Like he cried non-stop, guys. I'm not like, he never slept. He just cried. He had very, very bad colic. So literally any child after that, easy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Any child just seems like an angel because he was very hard.
Yeah, and Miller slept like a champ from almost day 1.
Yeah, he slept through the night so fast.
Yeah.
The hardest part?
Not so much anymore.
What was the hardest part?
Hardest part?
I think if it was our first, it would have been shocking, but just bringing a baby home when it's your first biologically, it's equally shocking. It's actually probably a little bit more traumatizing because your body has just gone through such a change, and you're like dropping your milk, and you're in postpartum, and you're using the squirt bottle, if you know what I'm talking about. And so all of that. So it was overall, bringing him home was an amazing experience, especially because we were so desperate to get home, having missed Christmas and all these things. We were like ready to be home.
And everything fell into place so well that it was a great experience. It really was.
Another cost question. So let me know in the comments below if you guys have any more specific questions about the cost. Every agency varies so much, but I do want to say that there might be another question on this, but I do want to say when you are picking your agency, one of the most important things to do when you're interviewing them, get an interview list off Google, just Google questions to ask agencies, find a couple, put in questions that you want, and call every single agency that you can find, ask them your list, bring it all together with your spouse or whoever or if you're single adopting, and look at it and decide what agency is best for you, pray about it, see what you're called towards. But the number one question I would 1,000% recommend is making sure that if the birth mom decides to parent in the hospital, which happens all the time, it's their child, they can decide to parent, that's fine. It happens a lot, that you don't lose all of your money, because that happens in so many agencies.
Yeah, there's a lot of places that you carry all the financial risk.
Yeah.
And you can basically have given them all of your money, and then the birth mom decides that she wants to parent the baby, which is completely her right to do, and then you have to start over.
You're out $40,000.
You have to start over from there. So
for sure, ask your agencies what happens if the birth mom decides to parent. What is their policy? What is their fee? American Adoptions at the time of Miller's adoption was $1,000 plus our travel expense. So we would have only lost $1,000 plus our travel expense, which would have been a hit. Of course it would have been, but it would not have been $40,000, right? It would have been $5,000, maybe $5,000, just because the flights were so expensive, but it would not have been like an earth-shattering amount. I mean, that's a lot, of course, but not in the grand scheme of how much you're actually spending.
So what they do is they basically, they keep the money that you gave them for that, and basically apply it as a credit towards your adoption. So
towards whatever child, the next child that you're matched with.
Right. So you can basically, you don't lose that money. You keep it with the agency. So they're not just giving you a refund so you can walk away, but they're saying, let's keep going. Let's try again.
Yeah. I would 1000% recommend that, guys. We know so many people who have lost hundreds of thousands because it's happened once or twice. And it's just heartbreaking because they're trying to find their child, but losing their financial everything. It's just heartbreaking. So make sure that it is in the contract. Don't just have it in saying. It needs to be in the contract that you sign when you are applying with that agency. Get off my little soapbox there. And when they did a home study, did they require the kids to have their own rooms? No, not in Washington State.
Yeah, no, we have a 3-bedroom house and we already had 3 kids at that point. So we were already out.
Shacking up.
Outdoing our rooms.
Shacking up, that's not inappropriate.
That wasn't an issue at all.
No, it wasn't an issue, but that's just Washington State and that's just private adoption. So I don't know what foster care or anything like that stipulates. We had to fill in the home study requirements for our specific agency. So make sure you don't just get a generic home study. Make sure you're signed up with your agency first so that you can make sure that you're filling out their requirements and you don't have to double do your home study and pay that fine again. Fee, not fine.
Good point.
Thank you. What was the biggest hurdle that you didn't expect and what was easier than you expected? Oh gosh, easy. The biggest hurdle that I did not expect was like this intense, overwhelming floodgate of tears of grief. Right, for the birth mom. Like I anticipated getting to know her and loving her and appreciating her for what she's doing for our lives and for our son and valuing that, but I didn't anticipate like loving her and just like feeling so much for her, because as a mom, as a biological mother myself, like I know what that feels like, that sweepingness of just love that comes over you. And it's so similar in adoption. Don't let that be discounted. Like the love for adoption is the exact same, but the physical being of the love that hits you when you give birth, like she was going through that and I knew what she felt like and I was just,
yeah, that you kind of expect that moment when
you have a hair on your face.
Like that moment when we take him with us away from the hospital. We kind of expected that to be like this really overjoyous moment, and it was actually incredibly emotional and sad, and it was amazing and sad at the same time, and it was a really weird experience.
I sobbed the whole way to the hotel like I was a wreck. And I don't cry like that. I was really upset.
Yeah.
I was really heartbroken for her. Do you think you will adopt again? If so, domestic or international, and how do you afford it? So right now, I would say that our family is very complete and we're very overwhelmed with what we have.
Yeah, I think that we feel very good where we are.
Yeah.
I think that we don't really feel like there's anything missing.
No, and I felt like that for a long time. I feel like we're kind of moving on to the next phase. Like we've done the baby phase, we've built our family, I fulfilled my dream of adoption, and now I feel like it's time to adventure and take the kids that we have and like really pursue their hearts and date them and spend one-on-one time with them. And the more children that we have, the more difficult we feel like that will become.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
and the cool thing about adoption though is that the door never really is officially closed.
Yeah.
So, we always have the option of
whenever we
opening that again.
Yeah, and don't you feel like whenever we say no to something, that's when God like kicks it open. He's like, "You're doing it."
Yeah.
And then like it's like on my heart, and I'm like, "I guess we're doing it."
Yeah, but we both feel very complete right now.
Yeah, we feel overwhelmed, and we want to be the best parents we can be with the kids that we have, and just straining ourselves more and pushing our patience more with another child. And like of course the love will always grow, but it's also our responsibility to parent who we have the best that we can.
Yeah. So if we did do it again, I don't really know, to be honest, if we do international or domestic.
Yeah.
We'd kind of have to see.
We'd go with how we felt.
How it felt. And as far as how do you afford it, you save, just budget and save.
The cost, I know that sounds superficial, but it's a major concern of mine. It's expensive. A lot of people do crowdfunding and events and bake-offs and cook-offs. There's a lot of fundraising that you can do. We had a GoFundMe for like 2 days, and then I felt weird about it and took it down. I think we made like maybe $1,000.
Did we really?
Something like that. People were really generous really quickly. I just felt like out of all the things that people needed to be funded for, like kids with cancer, like, and they don't have anywhere to live when their kids are in the hospital, like give money to them. So I took that down.
There are some employers that have adoption assistance as well.
Target.
So it's something to look into.
T-Mobile.
Well, there's thousands.
Lots of big companies.
A lot of the bigger companies do have adoption assistance, so something to check out.
It was actually strange. I don't know if we've ever talked about this, but personally for us and how we afforded it, Ben was making amazing money at the time. We left that job to go RV and just kind of tone down our life. But before that, I really believe that God put us in that job specifically so that we could afford adoption. And it was just like this amazing revelation of how we went on a date night one night and Ben brought up adoption to me after years of me praying for it and really wanting to do it, but putting it in his hands. And then he brought it up to me and we're like, well, how are we gonna afford this? Like, you guys know that's a big financial task. That's a big thing that you're saving for. And strangely enough, 1 week after Ben told me, let's go for it, after all those years of me waiting, he got a job at his commission job that was exactly the amount that was gonna cost for our adoption. Never in our whole 5 years at this company have we ever had that big of amount come our way, not ever. And then perfectly right after we decided on our agency, after we signed up with the agency, we got this commission knowledge that he had just signed this huge account and we were making the exact amount that we needed to cover adoption. Never in your like 5 years at the company have we ever even made anything near that amount, not ever. And then just that, like a week after we said yes to God about doing this adoption, we were just handed the money. Like the money will come. If you're doing it in the right timing and all these things, the money will come just in time for you to get your child. Like it will come, just have faith through it and work really hard at fundraising or whatever it is you feel that you're being pulled to.
Yeah, don't just sit back and wait for somebody to give it to you. You know,
because
you
it won't happen.
For it.
Yeah, Ben was working like 80 hours a week at that point. Like he was working really hard. And like we were just handed this commission check that we just saved. And the thing too about it, we didn't know the call was coming, but we got that call about the commission in early or middle of June. And then that we were getting that, we're like, great, but it was like 5 months away. And we're like, okay, well, hopefully it'll come at the right timing, but still just amazing. We got that commission check like a week before we got the call for adoption.
I forgot
like 1
about
week.
That. Yeah.
So
that's pretty cool.
We got the money in our account. We're like, okay, if we get the call, like, how are we gonna afford this? We don't have it, we don't have it. We got the call and the money had been in our account for just 1 week. So like God will provide the funds for your adoption. Just work really hard, be really ingenuitive, be really creative with your crowdfunding and all of those things. That's what we are going to do. Garage sales. People will donate so much stuff to you to put in a garage sale. If you say it's for an adoption, just do donation only for adoption. People will give you money. Just a really amazing how people just come around you to support adoption.
If you go to church, there's a lot of churches that'll do like an offering dedicated for somebody that's trying to adopt. So there's a lot of different things that different organizations have set up to help.
Question, where do you even start? What I did was I asked every single person I have ever known that did international, I did this like in a 2-week period, guys, that had done international domestic adoption. I asked what agency they went through, if they liked their experience with that agency. And then I hoarded those all together. And then within 3 days, I called every single one of those agencies once I had my question list in order. And then I went from there. And then we decided the pros and cons of international adoption, really felt pulled towards domestic adoption, and that's when we settled on it. And that's when we found American adoptions with their refund policy if a birth mom changed her mind. And I liked that they supported their college and things like that. Other than prayer, what were your specific things you looked for when you chose an agency? I think we kind of covered that.
Yeah,
birth mom support.
Yeah, I think so. And just, you know, the way that they, you know, I guess how big of a spread that they have, how big of a net that they have, you know, like,
yeah, that's true.
Because there's some agencies that are only, you know,
in
specific
Georgia
to one area.
Just, yeah.
Because you have to have a license in each state that you operate in to be able to be a part of that. And American Adoptions has a license in, I think, every state or almost every state.
Yeah, I think they're in most states.
So
they're nationwide.
They spread a much bigger net than other people do. So there's a lot of little things like that to consider.
That's true. That was another thing that I would ask adoption agencies in my questionnaire. How many views per month would you expect my profile to be seen by birth moms? So you make like through every agency you have a different thing. You make like a paper portfolio or you make a video. With American you do both. And that's actually what got us into YouTubing, strangely enough, is making that and being like, this was fun.
This is the first, yeah.
We like that a lot.
Video camera.
You guys can check that out linked below on those adoption videos. Because I asked them how many birth moms see your profile and they were telling me between 20 and 30. On the very low side would be less than 20, and that's not very common unless you have very strict restrictions. Very strict restrictions and things that you're looking for in the child, like you're gender specific or you don't want any of this or that in their pregnancy. So, but on average, I think we were shown to about 34, 32 a month. So that was a really high number for most agencies, and they were all over the United States. My 10-year-old son wants to ask, is it hard to love and care for a child that is not biologically yours?
That's a good question.
Very good question.
And the answer is absolutely not.
When it comes to a biological child, that love is kind of grown in the anticipation of them, right? Like you can, and then you start feeling some movement and you're like, oh, my baby. And then like you get huge and you get uncomfortable and they're kicking you around, but the love for that child in you pushes you through. You birth that child, you hold it in your arms. It's like very precious. The love is growing and then their love is there, right? But with adoption, for me personally, I have wanted to adopt since I was a child, like a very, very young child. So for me, this love has been growing since like the age of 7. Like I have wanted a baby through adoption for forever. So for me, it was almost difficult in the hospital to bond with him. I didn't bond with him. I very much viewed him as her child because I felt so much for her. But then she signed the papers. She handed him to me as mine. And then that was when I was like, okay, this is my baby. But then it really, like the love really but then I was just so heartbroken for her still. I was just so heartbroken for her that when we got to the hospital, that's when I was like, and like we had a night feeding and I had to get up and change his diaper. And then it was like, okay, he's mine. Like that's when it really hit me, and like the overflow of love and just taking him to Target to go get new diapers. Like he is mine, like in that normalcy of life as a mom. So the love is the same. And even now, like you don't even think about it. And that's how it should be. Like if you think that you can't love a child, some people I don't believe have it in them to love an adopted child. Some people, adoption is not for them. And if you feel like you might be that person, people say to me all the time, I don't think I could love an adopted child as much as I love my biological children. Then don't adopt. That would be my advice to you, because you don't want to have that doubt going in. You want to have it in your heart already so implanted that you can and you will love this child, because you have to, because they're yours. And Miller is just as much ours as our biological children, if not more, because there's even a heavier responsibility with him, because not only is he my child, but his birth mom gave me the responsibility and gave us the responsibility to raise him. So there's not only my love for him, but there's his birth mom's love for him. So I have to encompass all of that and be a mom, like a really good mom for him.
Oof, good answer.
Can you tell I really am passionate about this subject? Okay. New to your page, what made you decide to adopt? We touched base on this a little bit, but read the article and it'll really give you like an insight detail on that. Okay, did you go through an agency? Yes, we went through American Adoptions, which we talked about a bit.
They were fantastic.
Did you do an open adoption? We did a semi-open adoptions. With American Adoptions, if you do an open adoption, then you are committing to paying for that birth mom's expense to come and visit you a certain amount of times a year. And maybe even possibly her children, and paying for her lodging and paying for her food. And with us having all our dreams and desires of traveling internationally and RVing and all these whimsical things that we like to do, we didn't want to commit to having that financial responsibility. So we couldn't technically have an open adoption because that wasn't in their guidelines. So we have a semi-open adoption. Birth mom and I text back and forth, and we talk about meeting up. We'll go down to see her, things like that.
Yep, and we send pictures and all that good stuff. So.
Yes, so it's technically semi-open, but it's been just a really great process.
And that's something that there's a lot of debate about, you know, and I think that's something, in our eyes, I think it's something that's very important.
So important.
For the adopted child to be able to have a good sense of where they came from. You know, because that's going to be something that I think really is a desire to know, especially as they get older. And it's so much easier to have that conversation from day one with them, just to talk about, you know, here's who your birth mom is. And
or like, you want to know a specific, okay, wait, let me text her and ask her. You know, like that's a huge freeing thing for a child to know that they have that accessibility to the person who birthed them, to the person who made them. And it's not about us, right? A lot of people don't want an open adoption or don't want a semi-open adoption because you might be thinking from like your perspective. You don't want that because you just maybe want a child and you want it to raise it as your own. But as a parent, you want what is best for your child. No matter what that does for you, you want what's best for your child. So for us personally, we want what's best for Miller. And what's best for him is to have security in who he is within us and within his birth mom, for his health history, for biological siblings, for all these things that we can't answer for him, that his birth family can. And that's just so crucial for us, because going into adoption, we really thought, oh, we do a closed adoption so they can just come right in, fit great. But security and psychologically for adopted kids, it's so much healthier for them to have a functioning, healthy relationship with their birth parents that's facilitated within their adopted parents.
I agree.
That was a lot of words. Thank you so much.
Drop the mic.
All right, guys, that was our last question. Thank you so much for joining us for our adoption questionnaire day today. It was fun.
We've done a couple of these and they're a lot of fun.
Yeah, I got pretty serious with this one, where we usually are pretty goofy and laughy, but this is a topic that I'm like so passionate about.
If you're interested in seeing some of the other videos that we've done about our adoption story, then we will link them at the end of this video. So after we get done talking and we hear the music, those videos will pop up. Look for that.
Thanks so much for joining us today.
We want to do it at the same time.
Thanks so much for joining us today on our adoption video. I hope this was helpful for you. If you're starting this process, comment below. We want to support you and be there for you. If you have any more questions, let us know. We are more than willing to chat with you. Find us on Instagram at The Family Fulfillment Project. You can private message me there if you're more comfortable with that. We also share a little bit of our adoption story there. Our website is launching soon and there will be more information on there as well. Thank you so much for joining us today. We daily vlog, so we will see you guys tomorrow. Make sure you like this video if you found it helpful. Subscribe to our channel to see our day in the life videos and to see our sweet little Millie man and our cute kids.
Thanks for watching. Keep being awesome.
Keep being awesome. You don't know if they're awesome.
Oh, you're awesome. You are.
All right.
You may not know it, but I know it. You're awesome. Good night.
Good night.